On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very special treat. She's the founder of Cubicle to CEO and a self-proclaimed marketing minimalist, a badass entrepreneur, and just an overall terrific human being. She's my friend, Ellen Yin. Ellen, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome, Craig. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's absolutely my pleasure, and you can guarantee this. You and I will manufacture magic here today.
I love it. What a great way to start an interview.
The last time that we did a live together was a ton of fun, and it was a no-brainer to have you here on the show. And I'm very picky about who I collaborate with, but I feel a great connection to you, and most importantly, I'm a huge fan of everything that you're doing. And just want to tell you, keep up the great work. You are destined for greatness, and you're doing your thing over there, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for the encouragement. I really appreciate that.
Ellen, one of the things that always stuck out to me about you is, and then we'll dive deeper and we'll start at the beginning so the audience can hear a little bit about your journey, is you mention often that you felt stuck and essentially you were working too hard to live somebody else's vision. You were uninspired. And that's something that I can absolutely relate to. And it's why I pivoted and started CLS. And so I want to go back to the beginning and then we'll get back to that moment. When you were coming up and growing up and doing your thing, did you have clarity? Did you have a vision? Or were you kind of just going through the motions when you were a little bit younger, like even before college?
Oh, I love this question. So I've always been someone who had really big dreams. I don't think dreaming big enough was my problem. I think throughout childhood, I always loved reading, always loved writing. So, my dream itself shifted a few times. Like when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be an author. I remember I'd go on scholastic.com and like look up different ways that you could get in contact with a book publisher, even at a very, very young age. And that dream in and of itself hasn't changed. I would love to, author a book. But
And you
as
will.
I Thank you. Thank you. And as I progressed through middle school and high school, I really fell in love with journalism. And my freshman year of college, I actually originally attended the University of Southern California with a broadcast journalism major because my intention was to do TV programming. I wanted to be a news anchor or be a red carpet correspondent and interview celebrities. I've always loved interviewing people. And so that dream changed a little when I, you know, transferred home to Oregon State for college because I didn't want to graduate with $200,000 of student loan debt.
Yep.
And we didn't have journalism at my university that I graduated from. So at the time, actually, I had just gotten into lifting and my whole fitness journey, and I fell in love with the gym and this whole new world that I was discovering. So I decided, hey, why not become an exercise science major and, go through anatomy and physiology, kinesiology, all these things. And so that is actually what my degree is in. It's super random and I've never used it professionally, but I really enjoyed getting to learn about something that I was super passionate about, at least at the time.
So before then, you were never really into fitness too much?
Never. No, I wasn't really someone who grew up playing sports. I was really involved in the arts and music. And well, in high school, I did play tennis and I was on dance team, but still not super traditional sports. And so I never had, regularly gone to the gym or had a weightlifting routine until I was introduced to that whole world by my friend Emily in college.
Got it. And then from there, you knew in your mind that this wasn't going to be long term. It wasn't going to be a professional thing. It was more of just a hobby at the time.
I am not exactly sure what my plan was when I switched to, majors. I just knew that I was genuinely interested. At the time I was fascinated by this. I was totally a gym rat. I know I don't look it now, but at the time I
Give
totally,
yourself a little credit.
but I totally was. And so, I really felt like I needed to, you know, be part of something that I genuinely actually wanted to learn about. I didn't want college to be like high school where I just took a bunch of classes because I thought I should. And so I wanted whatever I was studying to be something I was genuinely interested in. So I knew though that I didn't want to go the traditional career paths that people who, are kinesiology majors typically go, like physical therapy or, working in a hospital or whatever it may be. But right out of college, I actually landed a full-time job in a marketing position for a fitness coaching company. So I did get to use some of my knowledge and background there. It was just in a different role or capacity than, being a fitness coach per se.
Understood. Was that your first job outside of college?
It was, yeah. I actually interned with them my part of my junior year, all of my senior year, and they were the company that I actually just randomly met them through Instagram, pitched them for an unpaid internship, and it turned into that full-time job eventually. But they were a pivotal part of my debt-free journey and paying off almost $19,000 of student loans during my senior year so that I could graduate college debt-free.
Nice. And then taking one step back, even before what you were just talking about, when you were even younger than all that, did you have the entrepreneurial spirit inside you, like that ambition, even when you were a little girl? Or did you kind of develop that, like when you found the fitness thing and whatnot?
I think I've always had it. I remember being a little kid, and actually, I remember me and my uh, neighbor Lindsay. One summer we did this like 5-day summer camp for the kids in our neighborhood, and we charged like parents $5 a day to basically teach their kids and like hang out with them. And we were always doing like these little endeavors, like we'd go on this like can collecting drive, and we raised money for, I think at the time, what was that, like Hurricane Katrina.
Mhm.
um, all these different things. I've always really loved thinking outside the box and finding a new path. And even my very first job earning actual money of my own, I was a piano teacher. And so I didn't get a traditional job in high school. I guess created my own music business, and I had
That's
several
great.
students that I taught. Yeah.
That's cool. I love that.
Thank you.
So, but piano teaching, that was never a long-term thing either.
No, no. I grew up playing piano, and I was pretty good at it, but I never had any intention of making that a professional career.
Gotcha. You know what I love about you? You're a visionary. And I love what you just said. Like you're always looking to think outside the box and do something creative and do something outside the norm. In fact, being the norm probably made you uncomfortable, where
Mhm.
most people feel comfortable being normal. And I think that's what led you to, after college, eventually you kind of ended up in a position where you were doing what society might have a plan for you to do, and just kind of go through the motions. And I think a lot of people do that, and a lot of people wake up unfulfilled and not happy. So how did you end up in that job before realizing that you're uninspired and ultimately pivoting?
So, how I ended up at my corporate job, if we go back to that first job that I had out of college where I was doing marketing and PR for this fitness company, I had a really interesting foray into the professional world because I worked at home. I was a remote worker. They were based out of Colorado. I live here in Oregon. So, I never really had that right out the gate corporate experience. So maybe I got accustomed to being at home and having, more flexibility than most people do right out of college in terms of time and how I spent my energy. And then what happened was they did an entire restructure at that company, ended up laying off pretty much all of their staff. And it was kind of unexpected. And I had planned to be with that business long term. And so I kind of found myself in this weird in between space where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do next. So I actually, for a couple months, I worked at a hair salon. I was like a front desk coordinator, just, trying to figure out my next move. And I ended up applying for a marketing position at a local company. They're a huge healthcare company in this region, and ended up getting hired. I was the youngest, I think coordinator they ever had on their marketing team.
Nice.
But it was one of those things, Craig, where day one, I remember the very first day of my job, ending the day, logging out of that computer and thinking, this was not at all what I expected. And I really don't like this. And I knew it. I knew it from day one. And
Really?
it wasn't the people. I mean, everyone was really nice. I made some great friends there. I met my current boyfriend of like almost 4 years there. So it wasn't anything like that, but it was just the fact that I knew that this work didn't fulfill me, and I was so clear about that on day one. And I think where a lot of people, Craig, you're right, they get tripped up is they feel like, oh, well, I have to do things the right way. So like, even if they end up in a job they don't like, they're like, well, society tells me I should stay here at least a year. So it
Yep.
doesn't look like I am jumping ship on my resume. I should do, it's always like shoulds.
Yes.
And I feel like I could have very easily fallen into that, but I actually ended up quitting that job 10 months later. I had not even worked there a full year and I didn't have any backup plan, but I just knew that wasn't the place I was supposed to be. And I didn't want to prolong that any longer just to satisfy some imaginary, standard that society has set for us.
Understood. And with your mindset to leave somewhere with, as they say, no safety net, takes a lot of confidence, right?
Yeah, confidence, a little craziness. I don't know, maybe the same thing. But I really felt like I just knew that I feel like when you know that you can do better, like your skills and your talents can be used to impact more, that it's not so much about you, but anymore like you're not like, oh, can I do this? But you just know that the work that you're doing doesn't have the purpose that it should. And so I wasn't worried about finding another job. I knew it might take me a little bit longer depending on how the job market was, but I just knew that the sooner I got out of there, the more I would be open to potential opportunities that would come my way. And it was actually because I did quit my job at the time that I did, that I happened to be in the right place at the right time to sign one of my biggest clients, that totally just changed the trajectory of my career, of my business, everything. And that never would have happened had I just stayed even 2 months longer in that job, just waiting it out.
And I think that's so valuable to the audience. It's hard to suggest to people that aren't fulfilled to just leave without necessarily a game plan. But I'm also a big believer in that you can't get to second base with your foot still on first. And just like you
Mhm.
said, had you not have left and opened yourself up to the abundance of the universe, this other unbelievable opportunity would not have landed for you. So that's
Yeah.
pretty special. So
Yeah, totally.
so what kind of client was he to you? What were you doing at this point?
So after I quit my job, I actually had a really bad back injury that pretty much like annihilated me for all
Really?
of January. Yeah, it was, I have to this day, we don't know what happened. It's not like anything specific happened. Just one day, my back and my diaphragm just started spasming and the doctors couldn't figure out the cause of it. I was like, I couldn't lay down sleeping for 2 weeks. It was terrible. So that was not a fun time in my life. So pretty much January 2018, nothing happened really. But in February, I was still applying for jobs at the time, but then I actually ended up landing very, very early in that month my first ever client. They were a local coffee shop and they wanted help with their Instagram accounts. And, I thought, why not? I have the skill set. I can help you. Let's do this. And very shortly after that, I actually got referred to that client that I was just referring to, the big time client. They were a huge brand in the consumer packaged goods space, and they were taking off, just growing astronomically. And they ended up very quickly moving me into the role of basically directing all of their social media and influencer marketing. And it was it was huge because with that client, I got to travel all over the country. I met so many incredible people, including, Chris and Jen, who we were just talking about before this show, and just opened myself up to so many new opportunities. And I think more than anything, opened my mind to the fact that I was thinking too small. Like with this business, originally when I started it, I was like, it would be great if I could just replace my corporate income and live a comfortable, lifestyle as a solopreneur. But within the first 12 months of my business, we had scaled to six figures. We had
Wow.
gotten quite a few clients. And ever since then, our business has literally doubled every single year in revenue, in team members, everything. And so I think when I started this journey, I didn't want necessarily to be a business owner with a big team, but now it's my favorite thing. I love to create jobs for people who genuinely, want to do something with their lives that they're excited about showing up to work for every day.
I love that. And I feel the same way and I can relate to that because I'm continuously growing my team as well. And to be able to provide an opportunity for someone to wake up every day excited about what they're doing, they buy into your vision, into your plan, it changes everything. And
Totally.
yeah, absolutely. And just to wake up excited every day with
Mm.
that passion and that purpose, there's nothing like it in the entire world. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's you know, not to gloss over the fact that there are still hard days or times when
Of
you
course.
doubt yourself or whatever, but it's different when you feel like your work has purpose because you can get through those hard moments knowing it's worth something and you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, you know?
Absolutely. And also, like, for me, and tell me if you can relate to this, even when I have a challenging day with what I'm doing now,
Mhm.
living in a state of gratitude because I'm fulfilling my purpose and also my passion. So it's really not that tough in the grand scheme of things. When I think back when I was doing something that I wasn't exciting about, and essentially I was just existing and not really alive, like the Craig today, that to me is like, that's an issue. But nowadays, there's going to be challenges that'll never stop. No one's career or life goes up in a straight line. There's peaks, there's valleys, and whatnot. But remaining in that state of gratitude and continuing on your journey, living in your vision, I think that's key.
Absolutely. You said it so well. I couldn't agree more.
That's great. How big is your team right now?
Oh, geez. Let me think on this. People always ask me, I should know this like off the top of my head, but my when I say team, like I consider my employees as well as my like regular contractors that, I'm working with every single month that are basically part of our team, or I consider them part of our team. I think it's anywhere between 7 and 9 people.
Nice.
I'm not gonna take the time to count every single one on the show, but I'm pretty sure it's like between 7 to 9 people, and they're amazing, truly.
Yeah. So when you helped them out, the coffee shop with the Instagram, and they paid you a little bit, and you saw like, my goodness, this is great. I can live a life by my design. Whatnot. Did that alter your entire like map of the world, like the way you perceive and see what's possible for you? Or before that, did you kind of know that you were going to do something yourself? Or was that like a key moment that triggered, oh my goodness, there's limitless abundance out there for me?
Ooh, that's a really, really good question. To be honest, I've always I think my mindset has grown a lot in terms of abundance mindset and so many other things over the last couple years as an entrepreneur. I think business has been one of the greatest teachers of mindset. Honestly, I don't recognize the person I was a couple years ago before I started this. But at the
Likewise.
same time, when it came to thinking big, because I always dreamed big and because I always knew I wanted my life to be extraordinary and not I never wanted to be average. And so I I think that didn't change very much. I think it was just the vehicle and how I was going to get there. So, yeah, I would say that was the biggest difference. And honestly, my first client, Craig, it was a $300 project. Like it was nothing earth-shattering, okay? Like you can't even pay your bills with that. But I think what I realized was, oh, someone's willing to pay me a couple $100s to do, something I actually enjoy doing. Okay. Well, if I can do this one time, I bet I could sign another client and maybe next time it's going to be $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is and it really just kind of gave me the confidence I think to go out there and say, okay, I can replicate this again and I can keep going bigger and better.
For sure. It was a shift in your perspective and your mindset now that you saw what was capable for you. And that's
Yeah.
huge. And I could definitely relate to that myself when I started CLS. Like in the beginning, you never really know what's going to happen, as
Hmm.
confident as you may be. And you hear stories about people, you know, failed launches or rebranding, this, that, and the other thing. All you can do is take care of everything that you could control.
Mm.
And when I, right away, people started coming, I would like to work with you. It just gives you a whole level of confidence. Like I'm doing something right here and we could build on it from there.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. I think seeing the way that you are actually impacting people and them giving you their feedback is so motivating. It's so driving and like affirming of what you're, actually doing.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that's the most special thing. A trendy word these days, Ellen, is the word pivot. And I want to
Mm.
just ask you about that for a second because it became trendy and cool to kind of pivot left and right. But also sometimes I think that people might be looking to pivot too soon. Maybe they should see why something didn't work and then just reorganize, re-strategize, and kind of put a different DNA on it. What are your thoughts on pivoting and when to pivot?
Okay, so before I answer that question, I want to quickly add a little insight on this
Yeah.
trendy word of pivot. I agree with you, obviously, because of the events of this year. Pivoting has been the name of the game. But what's kind of ironic, actually, is in September 2019, so obviously before COVID, I gave my first ever stage talk. And it
I
was
saw
actually
it.
at
I did my homework. I loved it, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And if you, since you saw it, you probably remember in that speech, I was talking all about my motto in life is to pivot and persist. Pivot when it's not your turn yet and persist until it is. And so it's funny that this year, I mean, that really, really came to light. And I would say in terms of knowing when to pivot, sometimes it really is just a gut feeling or an intuition. And what's weird about me is I am a very indecisive person on little things. Like, Craig, if you and I were to, go out to lunch,
Hmm.
and it would take me like forever to figure out what to order because I'm
Really?
so indecisive. Yeah. But little things, right? But on big things, like big life changing things, like, oh,
Moonshot.
yeah, like, oh, you're going to move back home and switch colleges, or, oh, you're going to, quit your job without a backup plan, like radical things. I'm like, yep, like impulsive, like, let's just do it. And so I've always been very weird in that way, like just this dichotomy. And so I feel like a lot of times when I do pivot, it really is just a gut intuition. Like, I feel like I have to do this, so I'm just going to do it before I let fear talk me out of it. Um, there was a follow-up question. You said when to pivot, and then
And then
what was your
when to re-strategize and maybe just figure out why something didn't work.
I think that what I have learned over the last year, especially, is that sometimes your ego and your feelings get in the way, but you have to, especially as an entrepreneur, I think you have to learn how to take a step back and be able to look at objective things like data and not let your own head write the story. Like, look at it in context and say, okay, what is the data actually telling me, and am I making up a story just to appease my ego or my whatever? And so numbers very rarely lie. They don't always tell the full story, but they don't lie. And so I think a lot of times, we've had to cut things, for example, from my business, or pivot, or, maybe let go of a team member where it was a really difficult decision and I didn't want to do it. But when you actually take in all the data, you realize, okay, like this is actually what it is. And you just have to kind of accept that you need to make that, re-strategize.
Yeah. And also, I wanted to segue into this. And I know we're a little bit all over the place, but I love this. Back in when you were in high school with the MTV situation, I just want the audience to hear this one. You were pitching, and the pitch wasn't going exactly as you might have envisioned. And so you pivoted with that pitch, and
Mhm.
ultimately it worked out wonders for you. Is that accurate?
It is, yeah. So I don't remember why at all MTV came to our school, because I mean, I grew up in like a small town nothing special. Like, we have nothing, no relations to the media. And I don't know why they did an open casting call at our school for Maid. It, is a popular show back in the
I've
2000s
never.
where, yeah, I'm sure most of you listening know. But anyways, they were doing an open casting call, and I went in for an individual audition for, actually, I think it was to, like, I was like, I want to be made into a red carpet correspondent, because again, my mindset at the time was I was going to go to college and be a broadcast journalism major. And I I could tell, like, the producer was like, oh, that's an interesting idea, but it wasn't quite what they were looking for. Because, as you know, anytime with reality TV, even back then, it's all about, like, what's the angle, what's the drama, what's the story. And so I was actually sitting next to my friend who happened to be a co-captain on our school's dance team. And we decided, I mean, we were auditioning individually, but we were in the room together. And I kind of like did this like mid conversation pivot, and I was like, well, but like, we, hopefully she doesn't mind that call out. Michelle and I are are on the our co-captains of the dance team together. And, we've had coaching changes every single year. And, our program has never been well funded or very good. A lot of our members that come on have no dance background. And so we're basically starting from scratch, which is why we're never competitive, like all these things. And that you could tell immediately, like that hooked the producer, and they were like, oh, so you have a really crappy program. All right. Like, so what is this? Tell me more. And then they just like dug into it more and more. And literally a couple weeks later, they sent out a producer from New York to do like a green light test run. We passed that. And then in the fall, they came back and we filmed for 6 weeks for that episode. So it was a crazy experience, but yeah, it was fun.
And it happened because you pivoted mid-pitch and kind of regrouped.
Yeah.
That's great.
Sometimes you just have to read the room. And I mean, this is true for anything in life and business and sales. It's really never about you, right? It's about the other person and what are they looking for and how do you provide the right solution for that. So in this case, the producer obviously was looking for something a little bit more dramatic, something that could show a more, enticing transformation, maybe involved more people. And so, the pivot made sense in that case.
One of the other things I love about you, Ellen, besides the obvious, is your persistence. You're a bit relentless. And I mean that as with all the respect, you're super persistent. And I think that's been one of the major keys to your success. You don't get rattled by the word no,
Mm-mm.
as seen with what happened at USC when
Yeah.
you get in, when you first applied. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but you tweeted at them and then they let you appeal and then you got in.
Short story. Yeah. So I discovered USC my junior year of high school. So actually pretty late on in my, high school exploration of colleges, but I just immediately fell in love. Like I just loved everything about the school, the campus, the programs. And I like was obsessed. I wanted to get in so badly. And, we went toward the college. I applied as normal. And I was actually on spring vacation with my best friend when I found out I didn't get in, and it sucked. And I was so crushed, but I remember hearing, because I like totally trolled the college boards, like these forums online, like I was reading about experiences from past applicants. I knew that they had an appeal process. So I tweeted at the director of admissions and I was like, hey, like how do we go about this appeal process? Who can we talk to? He gave me the link and the contact for how to go through the process. And yeah, I mean, I drafted up a whole letter. I went out and got more scholarships. I like did all these things in these 2 months and then represented my case. And I ended up getting my rejection overturned and they gave me, admission. So kind of crazy, but sometimes no is just not right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so valuable for the audience because persistence is one of the major keys to success. And I think any endeavor. And a lot of people get discouraged when they face obstacles and challenges, and they tend to give up right before they might have just landed whatever it is, whatever moonshot is they were looking for.
Yeah.
And I see that often. And I love that about you, your persistence. And you continue to persist and you continue to break ground. And I think that's awesome. Another thing that I saw is because, again, preparation breeds confidence. I did a ton of homework on you, as I always do. And I wasn't sure if you said this or if you quoted it somewhere, but I saw you said something along the lines of, if there's no seat at the table, build your own table. And that really stuck with me. I thought that was awesome.
Thank you. To be honest, I don't know where that quote is from. I doubt it was of my own making, but I don't know who to give credit to. So, I think it's true though. Like a lot of times in life, people wait for the right opportunity to present itself. And sometimes it doesn't exist. Sometimes you do actually have to create it. Like that first job I got out of college, I had to pitch myself for an internship. They didn't have an internship program. I had to present my case for why I should be their first ever intern. And that because I did a good job and I did good work for them, that's why they believed in me enough to offer me that full-time role. And that's happened so many times. I remember one time, I actually remember it was, I think when I was working at that company, we were doing a series of blog features on, inspirational leaders or people. And one of the people we wanted to interview was the current Miss USA. And this was back when, I don't know, I think they were based out of New York, like it was like in Trump Towers or whatever. And I totally cold called them, like this organization. And I was just like, hey, I would like an interview with da da da. And they were like, what media outlet are you with? And I just like totally winged it. Like, I mean, literally, it was a blog. Like I didn't have anything that was truly, real credentials. And they got me through. I ended up booking an interview with them, and it was because I acted like I belonged there, like I had a seat at the table. And so sometimes you really do have to just either pull up your own chair, create your own stage, or act like you belong in that room.
I love that. And it's one of the things that I teach in my sold out moonshot masterpiece experience program. It's something similar, not quite the same as modeling. And I
Mm-hmm.
learned that back about 10 years ago when I was on Wall Street and I was studying NLP. And it's to find someone that you hold in high regard and use some of their traits that makes them successful. And one of them that I used was confidence. When I first got out of college, I didn't have a ton of it. And a situation like you just described would be perfect to model someone so you can create that seat at the table or have, the guts to call up and say, and do exactly what you did, even if you don't have all this experience. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's awesome. And I admire that about you.
Thank you so much. It's not always easy. And
No,
don't
it's
get me
not.
wrong, guys, it doesn't always work out for me. Sometimes sometimes I've, cold called or done something that was flat out just rejection, like no. But I think the more you do it and the quicker you become friends with failure and you stop being scared of it, your life is going to dramatically change. Like I honestly don't really care if I fail at things anymore because I feel like there's always a lesson I can take from it. That's always wisdom that's gained. So I'm not actually losing anything. And I know that, if it's not literally a life or death situation, I can bounce back.
100%. And also, you can't lose what you don't have. So if you don't
True.
take that
Yeah.
shot, then you have nothing. But if you take the shot and it doesn't go great, like you just said, you'll learn a valuable lesson and you'll be able to apply that somewhere else in life.
That's so good. That makes total sense, Craig. I don't know why I never thought of that, but that is true. You can't lose what you don't already have. That's a good one. I'm going to keep that one.
Good. Another quote, I'm not sure if you said it or you got it from somewhere, but this one really stuck out with me when I was doing my homework. Must endure a season of growth in order to enjoy a season of harvest.
Mm. That one I think actually was from my brain. But no one cancel me if that wasn't. So
That's great.
I'm kidding. No, it's true though. I think that people expect things to be overnight and that you just, you know, have immediate success or whatever it is, but you really do have to go through those seasons of growth in order to harvest, in order to reap the rewards. And that growth can take a long time and it can look different than you planned for it to. And it can be frustrating. And you just have to realize that life does come in seasons and that not every season is the best season, the perfect season, exactly what you wanted it to be. But my friend Heather always says, whether you get there in 10 days or 10 years, the champagne tastes the same at the end.
I
And
love that.
so just realizing you're on your own timeline and your journey is yours and not anyone else's.
That's great.
Thank you.
I love the way you said that. And, it's so true. Anything that you're doing that's really worth doing, that excites you, there's going to be a period where, there's a learning curve, so to speak, and you might not have results right away. But as long as you have a vision, you're living in that vision and you're moving the chain, so to speak, or, you're moving the needle, the
Mhm.
results will eventually come if you stay the course and you do and you learn and you apply the necessary action. That one
Yeah.
that one really stuck out with me. I see a lot of people that they don't get results right away and they get very discouraged. And then, like we said earlier in this conversation, it's time to pivot. Sometimes it is, you know,
Mhm.
obviously each situation is different, but sometimes it's just, how can I fix this? What can I do a little bit differently and continue to persist?
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that, you can pivot the strategy or the path, but you don't necessarily have to pivot from your North Star, from what you really want, right? There's a
I
million different ways to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And when you jump, the net will appear, but not a moment before, right?
Yeah. No, seriously, sometimes it's always easier to see in hindsight, obviously,
Yes.
but I think that people, again, they wait for perfect timing or perfect opportunity to make a decision to take the leap. But the truth is, like I mentioned in my example, sometimes you have to actually put yourself in the right place at the right time. You have to actually show up in order for the opportunity to appear. It's not the other way around. And same thing with that example, where if I had quit even 2 or 3 months later than I had, I wouldn't have, at the time that that client was looking for someone to fulfill that role, I would have been unavailable. I would have never even heard about it. My friend would have never even brought it up to me because I was in a full-time job. So why would they? And so it's little things that you can't predict what might appear or become available to you until you make yourself available first.
Yeah, I love that. And you have to be aligned in like the laws of the universe to say that, to speak it, and breathe life into it. Are you pretty spiritual, Ellen? If you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I don't mind asking it. No, not, I mean, I am spiritual. I'm Christian. I am, a Christ follower. And so that's always been a huge part of my life. And I think I've learned a lot about, to your point, like principles like law of attraction and, meditation and manifestation, all those things. I think that those have been really helpful and powerful tools, but certainly, yeah, faith has always been a huge part of my life.
You have to have faith. You have to believe in something.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Ellen, I know that you've said before, like you haven't really had a rock bottom or a major adversity. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of people's journeys and stories, like that's what people look for these days, is like that juicy, sexy moment where someone had rock bottom. But you've said you don't necessarily need to do that before making some drastic changes. And I really appreciate that. And I love it. And my story is a little bit similar to that in essence, where it wasn't like one specific thing that happened to help me like feel aligned, but it was more of a few things. And I realized I was unfulfilled. Was
Hmm.
there ever a time in your life that you were really down and in a lowered state, or not so much?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's definitely been and still are many times when I'm down or in a lowered state, especially with, and I'm always a very transparent person. I think especially with running a business over these last 3 years, I feel like I've experienced record high anxieties that I never did before. And a lot of it I'm sure is self imposed, but I think that anytime you step outside of your comfort zone, you do something different that you've never done before, and you maybe achieve, and especially this, actually, I think your listeners should hear this, is that sometimes people think that succeeding solves your problems. Like when you win or attain this new level of success, now you're fine. Like if you could just get there, then that would all be good. But really, what happens is when you achieve a new level of success, you actually have to start over, because every time you get to a place you've never been before, you're brand new. It's like you're reborn again. You're a brand new little baby and you have to relearn how to crawl, walk, run, all the things until you hit that next level. And so it doesn't necessarily solve all of your problems. I think it just introduces you to new problems, but that's kind of also the fun of life. Like life is an adventure, business is an adventure. And if there were no problems to solve, then how boring would that be? So
There would be nothing to
yeah.
overcome. And I love the way you said that. Because you've done so many cool, exciting, and big things, I wonder, Ellen, because a lot of people have dealt with this, myself included briefly. Have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome before you made like a big move?
Mm. I I mean, definitely. I think that everyone has imposter syndrome in some form or experiences it in different ways. I think the difference for me is that because I made peace with this idea of failure, and I actually realized that failing faster would lead me to where I want to go, like quicker, right? Like failing faster is actually a good thing. So I think because I made peace with that very early on, I rarely let imposter syndrome stop me from trying to do something, because I figure, like, what's the worst that could happen, you know?
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
any suggestions or any tips how someone can deal with that? Because a lot of people, a lot of clients that I deal with in the beginning, they have these limiting beliefs, and obviously I have my tools and techniques to give them. But I was wondering, because you're so great at this and you've done so many special things, if there's any advice or any suggestions you can give to someone before doing something pretty epic to kind of get over that imposter syndrome.
Actually, there was something really powerful that I learned just this past week. And maybe I've done this all along, but they actually verbalized it and put it into words for me. Um, this idea of if you have imposter syndrome, really that's about you and how you are reflected in this world. But if you shift your focus instead to, if I do this thing, can it help one person, or can this message reach one person and impact their life and make a difference? And would it be worth it to suffer a little embarrassment or a little anxiety if that one person's life who needs what I have to offer is going to be changed forever? Like, would that be worth saving a life to slightly, you know, risk a little embarrassment in your own? And if the answer is yes, and you start to think about the person instead of yourself, you'll quickly find that imposter syndrome is almost irrelevant, because who cares in the grand scheme of things if there's something so much greater at stake.
Yeah, and I love the way you worded that. It's so true. For it to even just reach one life and to help one person out, that's a huge win, and
Yeah.
that's paying it forward. And I love the way you said that. One of the things that I personally find so relatable to you and your story is because when I started CLS, I kind of had this feeling in my head, and I think you said something along the lines of you didn't leave your corporate job because something awful happened. You left because nothing extraordinary happened. And that one hits home to me. Tell the
Mm.
audience a little bit about what you mean by that.
So what I meant by that is, and I feel like you kind of briefly previewed this, is that oftentimes in life we wait for some big catalyst in our life, some big life event, whether it's a catastrophe or something awesome, for us to change anything. If nothing big happens, we just stay the same. And I realized, like, look, my job that I had in corporate America wasn't a bad job. I was well paid. I had great coworkers that I loved hanging out with at work every day, but the work itself wasn't fulfilling, and I knew nothing was going to change about that. It's not like if I stayed in that role for 5 years, all of a sudden I was going to love what I was doing. And I knew that my skills and my gifts were not being used to their full potential. So really it comes down to, okay, do you want to be complacent and accept like okay as good enough? Do you want to live your life forever at a 6 and never experience a 10, but know that you can be at a comfortable 6 for your whole life, right? And I realized, no, I don't want that. And so sometimes you have to be your own catalyst for change. You have to just step up and say, okay, there's nothing external that is causing or requiring a change of me, but I am deciding I'm going to be the change. I'm just going to change my life because it's not extraordinary, and I want to live my life at a 10, not at a 6. And so that's kind of what I meant by that.
I love that. And I think a lot of people, sadly, are living without that passion in life, without that fire that, has them getting out of bed every morning via triple backflip into a split. So
I wish I could do that.
So when I pivoted to start CLS, I had a spiritual moment when the pandemic happened, where it's the first time I had a moment, probably in a decade, because you can just imagine New York City and owning your own businesses, it's go, go, go. Where I
Mhm,
just had an opportunity to kind of hear the whispers and speak to God. And it was like, of course, my purpose is to help people transform and understand that there's such a better life out there for them. And I see so many people stuck, and
mhm,
it's their mindset. They think that they need to stay in the current lane that they're in, and that they don't deserve to live the phenomenal life that they desire. And I
mm,
think what that comes down to is just a lack of passion and a lack of fire. But you can help people create that spark so that they could see what's possible. Kind of like how I said earlier, like how you revamped your map of the world and what you saw possible, and you just kept pushing. And I think that's what makes you so special and so amazing, for lack of better words, is you're just getting started. I have no doubt, because you continue to expand what's possible for you and you're also persistent. But a lot of people just go through life living average in like you just said, like a 6 out of 10,
Mhm.
and they don't strive to look. And this, the pandemic taught us this: life is very unpredictable. It's a
Mhm.
short trip. Gotta make it a good one. Like life's too short not to try. And there's a lot of people out there that they're kind of scared to take a swing because they think that they might fail or they don't know about that safety net, right?
Mhm. Totally, totally. And, I don't want to, what's the word? Knock anyone's idea of what an extraordinary life is,
Sure.
because for you, Craig, for me, our idea of extraordinary may be just the wildest thing that people are like, I don't even want that. Like, I wouldn't even want that kind of life, right? But I think, to your point, it is so important for you to get clear on what is your version of a 10. Even if your version of a 10 is working, a 9 to 5 job, but that allows you to come home and be with your kids fully present and do XYZ, your 10 doesn't have to look like anyone else's
Sure.
10. But don't let yourself sit in anything less than that. If that's what you want, if you know what you want, I think getting clarity on what you want is actually the first step in doing that. And easier said than done, right? It's always easier to tell someone, oh, go do this, than for them to actually take action on it. But I think fear is, this is actually another great quote that I learned from this past week. You don't have to get rid of fear in order to make changes in your life. You can drive the car with fear in the passenger seat. It can be right alongside of you. It will always be a part of you in some ways because you're human. But understanding that you can still move forward even if it's in your life, I think that's really the key there.
I love that. And I find people often they become numb to their routine, which
Hmm.
you said. It's hard to get out of that. Why
Yeah.
do you think that is?
I think because so much of our daily lives are dictated by our subconscious mind. And that's rooted deeply in habits, in, little neural pathways that you've developed. Like, it's even the analogy of, like, if you're driving your car, you know how sometimes you zone out and then you end up where you were going and you don't even remember how you got there. Like, you don't remember stopping at the stop sign or taking a right at that light or anything like that. And it's because your brain is just like functioning in the background, like making you do all the things that it knows you're programmed to do. And so I think when you're not really awake and like actively looking at like what's going on in your life, you're just basically being run on autopilot. And so it is very difficult to interrupt that without pause. And I think that's what you were speaking about, Craig, is this pandemic allowed you to finally have a break, finally have that pause from your go, go, go life to really re-examine what you're doing and what you want. And I think that that's one of my greatest weaknesses, is pausing. I'm not very good at living in the moment because I am very future visionary focused.
Yes.
And so it's something I'm actively trying to work on. Like, for example, this month, this is my last working week of the year. I'm taking 2 weeks off at the end of this month. I'm super excited. And it's been so long since I've just literally had 2 weeks where I didn't think about work. All I want to do is like literally stay at home and like read my books and go outside for walks and just be still and be in pause. And I think that so much clarity can come to you when you're in a state of pause.
Absolutely agree with that. And it's very relatable to me. Alan, I see you doing your thing out there, and I'm a big fan of yours, obviously. It looks to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you've had a pretty great year and transformative, and you're doing your thing out there. Do you ever feel guilty telling people or saying out loud that 2020 has been a great year for you personally?
That's such a good question, Greg. I I I don't know if guilty is the right word.
Mm.
I feel, what is it? I feel aware or like cognizant that it's been a really terrible year for a lot of people. And I think I am sensitive to the fact that it has been, and I never want my celebrations or my wins to be construed as, well, you know, it sucks that you've had these terrible things, but I've had these great things, because I think that life doesn't exist in two separate dichotomies. It's not either like you're winning all the time or you're losing all the time. I think there's both, and they have to both coexist. And so, um, it is a difficult and sensitive topic um, to manage, but I also think people want to hear about good things. Like, I don't think anybody wants to live in tragedy and sorrow all the time. And so I am excited that 2020, it was not the year I expected, and it wasn't a perfect year for me by any means, but I actually am very grateful for a lot of things in 2020, and our business did see massive success in 2020, and there's a lot of things that I am very proud of that happened this year.
You're on fire, in case you didn't
Thank
already
you.
know that.
Thank you so much.
I got to ask you, Ellen, because I'm such a
Mhm.
fan of yours and I love to collaborate with you. And trust me, this will not be the last time. So for me, like over the years, everyone always asks me, like, who are my mentors, who are my inspirations? And for me, it's an interesting answer because I'm all for people having coaches and mentors and all that. But for me, I've really used the world as my playground. And I have about 6 or 7 journals on my dining room table, all just inspirational notes, some from NLP, some from Kabbalah, some from movies, some from books, all walks of life. I
Mm.
have to ask you, who are some of your big inspirations? Who do you sharpen the axe to? What gets you excited?
Oh, that's such a great question. There's I have a lot of different people I look up to or mentors. I think right and actually it kind of goes back to this idea of seasons of life. It depends on what I'm focused on in that season. So
Love
in
that.
this season in specific, I'm really paying attention to people who have done what I want to do, who have built a digital media company. It's something I want to shift into. That's not our current business model. So it's something totally new, brand new landscape that we're not, necessarily equipped to do right now. And so, for example, someone like Emma Isaacs, who I met this year, and she's the author of Winging It. She's built this massive global business through Business Chicks. We actually just hosted her for a book club last night, and she's quickly become a friend and a great person that I consider a mentor because I can go to her and look at what she's done and learn from her insight, from her experiences. And so I think I'm really trying to surround myself with strong female leadership in this season of life and looking at who are these women that have done the things that I want to do and how can I learn from them. So there's way too many to name. But like one for example, I'm joining this mastermind that starts in January with Julie Solomon. She was actually the first person I ever did a podcast interview with. I was on her podcast like in her beginning, and now her podcast is like one of the top ranking shows, on in all of like the business marketing world. And so it's kind of crazy that it came full circle, but those are just two women that came to mind right away.
Do you often do masterminds or is this out of the norm for you?
I did one in 2019. That was my first one. I didn't do a mastermind in 2020. I think I wanted a break and just kind of to be in my own
Oh,
space.
yeah.
But I'm ready again. I think I'm ready for that community aspect that and really for me, masterminds, it's not really about the strategy. Almost every time I invest in something, it's rarely about the strategy. It's almost always about the networking.
Right.
So, the relationships are the true asset there.
Absolutely. I love that. Do you journal, Ellen?
I do, not always regularly, but I'm very much a pen to paper type of person. So whenever I take notes, it's always pen to paper. And I like to brain dump like ideas on paper for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. So for the audience, we'd like to end it on a fun note.
Mhm.
2 quick questions. Very curious because you're obviously very successful. When do you wake up in the morning to start your day?
It depends, but I would say generally 7 a.m. I'm not like a 5 a.m., 4 a.m., like hit the ground running before the sun's up. That's just not my body's natural rhythm. I'm very much a night owl.
Is that when you're most creative at night?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I get my big inspirations and like my sprints that I do like a ton of really productive work at night for sure.
What time do you pass out at night?
That also depends. I would say most nights it's like midnight that I go to bed, but on the weekends I've totally stayed up later before. It really just depends on my energy levels that day.
Understood. And
Mhm.
also, because you were so big into fitness a few years back, do you
Mhm.
still have any type of fitness routine that you stick to? Is it still a big part of your life?
So this is actually the piece of my life that I felt like I really lost when I became an entrepreneur because my focus was so all in on growing my business. I really feel like I let my health take a back seat. And I have. I mean, that's just the truth. And it's something that I'm trying to figure out how to rework that passion back into my life because I mean, I used to be such a dedicated lifter, like literally 5, 6 days a week. I had exactly like knew exactly what I was doing. And um I miss it, like I used to be able to, what is it? Like one of my favorite lifts was the hip thrust and I could like hip thrust like 345 plates. That's like
Nice.
300 pounds or something, right? Like,
Wow. That's
yeah. So super, super fun. And I miss that excitement. Like the gym used to be my playground and I want to get that feeling back. So it's definitely something I'm working toward.
awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, here's probably an interesting question that not that many people would ask you.
Mhm.
So, usually the host would say, what advice do you have for the audience or whatnot? But I'm just going to be straight up with you. And by the way, I appreciate your vulnerability in saying that, fitness has taken a backseat, but you'd like to get back into that.
Mhm.
So I started my CLS, Cultivate Lasting Symphony, during the pandemic. And you hear all these things about how it takes time, and I appreciate all that. But I also learned as much as I can throughout the process, and I saw what other people were doing and how they succeeded. I
Mhm.
also paid attention to how people didn't succeed, and I tried to minimize that as much as I can. I'm grateful to say, it looks like to the outside world, it's been an overnight success. I sold out back-to-back programs. I'm super grateful for. I have another one that's launching later this week. As I continue to grow in the space and do my thing, because you've been around the space a little bit longer, what advice would you give me to keep doing my thing and take this whole CLS thing to another stratosphere?
Mm. That's super insightful. I would say if there are two things I could go back in time and tell myself, like very, very, very beginning, one would be I wish I had grown my email list a lot sooner. I think that's
It's relatable.
like pretty key among all entrepreneurs. Like they all wish anything that's an owned asset, I wish I had paid more attention to early on. Um, and then the other thing I wish I could have told myself is less is more. The 80-20 rule, that 80%
Wow,
of your results come from 20% of the things that you do. And I think it's really, especially when you're new to entrepreneurship, it's really easy to get caught up in the excitement of, oh, this is happening and then that's happening. And then I want to create this and do that. But if I could rewind time almost 4 years now and say, look, you get one product to scale to $1 million, to help 1 million people, to whatever, I think the trajectory of my business would have been very different. And so, yeah, being focused instead of trying to chase all the things.
I love that. And I love whenever we collaborate and we speak, one of the things that I get off on is that you challenge me and our conversation is always so stimulating. And I think that's going to benefit the audience a great deal. Ellen, where can the audience find you? Where do you hang out the most? Social media?
Yeah, I mean, the best place you can hang out with me on a regular basis is on my podcast, Cubicle to CEO. We have new episodes every Monday, and you can find us anywhere where you stream your podcasts. And then on Instagram at Miss Ellen Yin, I'm super active there. Open book. So if you want to send me a DM, tell me that Craig sent you. So I know we have a mutual friend in common, and I'd love to chat with you there.
I love that. Ellen, you don't shy away from your challenges as they've shaped you on your journey. And that's something I absolutely find relatable and liberating. I just want you to know you're the definition of perseverance, persistence, grit, heart from your journey of transitioning from fitness to entrepreneurship, leaning into your curiosity, pivoting, and now obviously truly finding your passion and your purpose. I can personally guarantee you that your best is yet to come. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you, and I can't wait to watch you fly. And this will not be the last time you and I collaborate.
Thank you, Craig. I hope not. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Appreciate you. Have a great day, Ellen.
You too.